I was listening to Mike Silver talk on the volume yesterday with Colin Cowherd. Um, and he was actually someone who was less predictive of Trey Lance being moved this offseason, though he changed his tune after listening to John Lynch's presser yesterday. And he seemed to sound like he was much more confident that it seemed like the 49ers were ready to move on from Trey Lance. Now, that's his
So he got
opinion.
that out of yesterday. It's so funny, Vish, because so many people got the exact opposite.
Well, I mean, I got that same impression too yesterday. I got the
Really?
same impression. I
Well,
felt
go
like
ahead. I want to hear from you, man. Would you
to
give me your
me
takeaway?
to me he sounded like the odd man out the way they were talking about it. I mean, we had direct examples in that presser of what John Lynch says if he's not willing to move off of a player. He's not willing to move off of Brandon Ayuk for this year. He told you that. He's a huge part of our plans for this year. He said there's no pipeline to trade for Nick Bosa. I understand it's Nick Bosa, but he also said the same thing about Debo last year. He had every opportunity to say those things about Trey Lance. He didn't. Instead, he talked about the smoke and all of that. To me, Larry, it sounded, you know what the funny part is? He said, hey, there's not a lot of smoke around the offers, like as if to indicate that they haven't been receiving that many offers for him. The 49ers clearly leaked that to Ian Rappaport. They were the ones who leaked that. I mean, the way Ian Rappaport reported that was as if to say it was basically a hey to the entire league. Trey Lance is available. If you want him, come get him. That's what that Ian Rappaport report was. So it's interesting to me that John Lynch then comes back and says, hey, there's not actually a lot of smoke. There's not that many offers. That he's basically indicating there's not a lot of interest for Trey Lance right now. And that's probably why they leaked what they leaked to Ian Rappaport. And why I brought up Silver is because I think Silver made a very interesting point. He said, I wouldn't expect Rand Carthon in Tennessee or D'Amico Ryans and Bobby Slowick in Houston to be immediately connected to Trey Lance. He says everybody's connecting him because of their connection with San Francisco. But to me, because of this is Silver's opinion, because of their connection with San Francisco, I would think they're less likely to trade for Trey Lance, because why would they want to trade for a quarterback that the Niners are seemingly giving up on?
Well, can I throw my 2 cents on that, by the way?
Sure,
I
go
mean,
ahead.
the reason I feel like they could have interest where the 49ers are looking to move Trey.
I agree. It fits their timeline.
Just because Trey's timeline and the Niners timeline don't mesh, but Trey's timeline and the Texans or Titans timeline mesh perfectly.
Perhaps, and I agree with that too. But I that was Silver's point. That was just what he felt, and usually he feels something based on talking to somebody or something like that. And so I thought that was interesting. Really, Larry, I don't think the Niners are going to balk at something very, very unvaluable for Trey Lance. Like, I don't think, Larry, a third round pick is going to do it, because I feel like they need to do something that's going to make them a better football team this year if they move Trey Lance. Like, that has to be clear, right? Like, when they move him, Larry, the only real justification you can have when you're moving off of a quarterback this quickly, regardless of how bad or good you think he is. I know a lot of people say already he sucks. I know a lot of people think he's going to be a superstar. The reality is none of us know. The guy's had 105 passes in the NFL in 4 games. It's very difficult to pass a definitive judgment on him. But the one escape the Niners have is that they can say no matter what happened, we always liked him. We always thought he was going to be good. He just didn't fit our timeline. So the question is, how are you going to get something that's going to for sure make your football team better this year for him? I think that's what the compensation should be around, because that's the one Niners get out of jail free card, right? Like, hey, we traded this guy. He ended up becoming good, but he ended up becoming good 3-4 years down the road, and we needed something that was going to help us win the Super Bowl at the time. And we got this guy, and he helped us win the Super Bowl. So sure, we got rid of a quarterback who ended up being really good, really bad. I don't know, whatever he ends up being. But we did it because our timelines didn't mesh, and, we ended up getting this that made us better this year. I don't think they're going to find that, Larry. And I think ultimately that's why they're going to keep him. But I didn't get the impression from Lynch's press conference that they're going to keep him because they actively want to keep him this year, or they actively don't want to keep him this year. I got the impression that they're very okay with trading him. They have planned out a scenario where they traded him. That's I really got that impression from the presser. Not the impression I wanted to get either, by the way. I prefer to get the opposite impression because I've been vehement. I don't think they should trade him. But either way, Larry, I got the impression from John Lynch that I think they're going to want to trade him. And so I think they're going to be okay with trading him. So ultimately, I don't know. I look, Larry, they stood pat on Jimmy Garoppolo's value last offseason. They had zero reason to keep him. And remember, there was the reports that they were standing pat. They didn't want to trade him for a third-round pick. They wanted the 2 2s. Was that the number for Garoppolo? Because they felt like they could let him walk for a compensatory pick this year. They ultimately kept him. I can't see them taking a price to just move off of Trey Lance because they just want to get a clean cut from the quarterback room. It just doesn't feel like their style. And so I think ultimately they keep him, but I don't think they're keeping him because, hey, they're not trying to trade him at all. I think they're keeping him because they don't find the opportunity to trade him.
Well, I mean, it just comes down to, to me, it's pretty cut and dried. It's like, okay, look at the quarterbacks in the draft. As soon as those top quarterbacks come off the board, okay, so let's say Levis goes 11. Okay, so now let's go down the board. Texans still don't have a quarterback. They're at 12. And is New England going with Mac Jones? They're at 13. They're at 14. Commanders don't have a quarterback. They're at 16. There's no Tampa quarterback at all. They're 19. Seattle's looking for a quarterback. They're at 20. Trey's backyard is Minnesota. They're at 23. Baltimore has been rumored to be connected to Trey.
Think they're going to take
22.
Hendon Hooker, by the way, Minnesota.
Okay.
I've seen a lot of expert mock drafts say Minnesota's taking Hendon Hooker.
Maybe that's the case. So who knows? I mean, there's some quarterback needy teams there that and we'll see where it goes. But I just think that when you look at the next quarterbacks on the board are like guys like Tanner McKee, and Jake Haener, and I think Trey's quite a bit better as a prospect than those guys.
Look, I don't know if it's that. I think
somebody will give you a third.
I agree.
It's just a matter of will they take a third.
I agree that he is a better prospect for sure, but he is the riskiest prospect in the history of the NFL now because he came into the draft. Well, but the question is, will the Niners look at a third-round pick as return for a player that they used 3 1s to acquire? That's what I'm saying. I'm going to say no. I don't think the Niners will take such an offer. And the problem is, I think that's the maximum a lot of other teams will be willing to offer because you have to mitigate the risk of the fact that the guy hasn't played football basically in 3 years. So he came into the league as somebody that was a projection, and we're 2 years into the experience, and he remains every bit the projection that he was from year one. You have to be able to mitigate that risk knowing that he remains a projection 3 years after you thought, hey, this guy is a talented projection. And so that's where, Larry, I agree with your point that somebody could offer like a third-round pick. I don't think the Niners would take that.